The Wyoming Territory, 1875, is a land of raw beauty and brutal indifference. The sun dips low, bleeding crimson across the Teton Range, where peaks claw at the sky like the bones of some ancient beast. Dust swirls across the endless prairie, carried by a wind that moans like a ghost, mourning its own death. In the heart of this wilderness, a lonesome cabin slumps against the weight of years, its splintered walls barely holding back the cold. Inside, two orphans, 17-year-old Caleb Monroe, lean as a whip and with eyes that carry too much for his years, and his sister Ellie, 14, her braid fraying but her spirit unyielding, sit by a fire that's more ash than flame. Their parents' graves lie just beyond the warped door, marked by crosses whittled from pine, weathered by the same relentless wind that haunts their dreams. They're alone in a world that devours the weak, but tonight, something buried in this broken-down cabin is about to spark a fire of hope and draw the wolves closer than ever. Caleb kneels on the creaking floor, his fingers working a rusted knife under a loose board near the hearth. His breath is shallow, not from the chill but from a flicker of something dangerous. Hope. "Ellie, you're sure you saw Pa messing with this spot?" he asks, his voice low, rough with the weight of their loss. Ellie, wrapped in their mother's faded shawl, nods fiercely. "I'm telling you, Caleb, I saw him. Nights when he thought I was asleep, he'd kneel right there, whispering to himself like he was praying." Her voice is soft but sure, carrying the stubborn spark that's kept her alive through winters that claimed stronger souls. Caleb grits his teeth and pries harder. The board groans, then pops free, revealing a small, dust-choked tin hidden in the shadows beneath. He lifts it with trembling hands, the metal cold as a grave. Inside, wrapped in a scrap of oilcloth, lies a folded parchment, yellowed and brittle. Caleb unfolds it carefully, as if it might crumble to dust. It's a claim deed, scrawled in their father's careful hand, staking a legal right to a gold vein tucked in the folds of the nearby Wind River Hills. A rough map is sketched in the margins, marking a narrow canyon where the earth supposedly bleeds gold. "Ellie," Caleb breathes, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is it. Pa's secret. Our way out of this godforsaken place." The firelight catches the parchment, making it glow like a promise, but Caleb's eyes are shadowed with doubt. He's seen what hope does to folks out here. It builds them up just to break them harder. Ellie leans closer, her eyes wide with dreams that haven't yet been crushed by the prairie's cruelty. "We could have a real house, Caleb," she says, her voice trembling with possibility. "A place with glass windows, maybe a school, somewhere Ma would have smiled." She reaches out, her small hand brushing the deed, as if touching it makes the dream real. But Caleb's jaw tightens. He's old enough to know the West doesn't hand out dreams for free. "We gotta keep this quiet," he says, folding the deed and slipping it inside his patched jacket. "Folks out here'd slit our throats for a scrap like this." Ellie nods, but her gaze drifts to the cabin's only window, where the warped glass rattles in its frame. The wind outside carries a faint sound, a metallic jingle, like spurs clinking in the dark. The prairie itself is a character, vast and untamed, its beauty as sharp as a blade. It stretches beyond the cabin, a sea of grass and stone that hides secrets and swallows screams. The camera lingers on the horizon, where the last light clings to the earth. A lone rider emerges, a black silhouette against the dying sun. Gideon Voss, a man carved from the same hard earth as the land itself, rides slow and deliberate. His hat is pulled low, his coat dusted with the grime of trails stretching from Deadwood to Denver. His eyes, cold as slate, miss nothing. Words. "Been drifting through saloons and trading posts about a lost claim in these hills, a vein rich enough to make a man king, or a corpse." Gideon's not the kind to ask permission. His hand rests on the grip of a well-worn Colt, and the jingle of his spurs cuts through the wind like a warning. Back inside, Caleb and Ellie sit closer now, the open tin between them, its contents a fragile bridge to a life they barely dare imagine. The fire pops, sending sparks up the chimney, and Ellie's voice breaks the silence. "What do we do now, Caleb? Just go find it?" Her question hangs heavy, a mix of fear and longing. Caleb looks at her, then at the deed, its inked lines promising salvation or ruin. "We find that gold," he says, his voice steady despite the storm brewing in his chest. "For Ma, for Pa, for us." But as he speaks, the cabin door shudders under a sharp gust, and the fire dims, as if the prairie itself is listening. Footsteps. Crunch outside, slow and deliberate. Caleb's hand tightens on his knife. Ellie's breath catches. The wind falls silent, and the jingle of spurs grows louder. Someone's here. The cabin door creaks like a warning, its rusty hinges singing a song of neglect. Caleb's hand freezes on his knife, his eyes locked on the warped wood as the jingle of spurs grows sharper, closer, cutting through the Wyoming night. Ellie clutches, the edge of their mother's shawl, her knuckles white, her breath a shallow whisper. The fire in the hearth flickers, casting long shadows that dance like specters across the cabin's walls. Outside, the prairie holds its secrets close, its vastness swallowing sound and light, but it can't hide the weight of a stranger's boots on the frozen ground. Caleb motions for Ellie to stay quiet, his finger to his lips, but his heart pounds loud enough to betray them both. The footsteps stop. A shadow shifts under the door's crack, broad and unyielding. A low, gravelly voice cuts through the silence. "Anybody home?" it drawls, laced with a menace that feels like a blade pressed to the throat. Caleb's mind races. The deed burns against his chest, hidden inside his jacket. He glances at Ellie, her eyes wide with fear but fierce with trust. He nods toward the corner, where a rickety ladder leads to a small loft. "Hide," he mouths, and Ellie scrambles up, silent as a shadow, tucking herself behind a pile of old blankets. Caleb stands, his knife still in hand, and steps toward the door. His voice is steady, though his insides churn. "Who's there?" he calls, trying to sound older than his 17 years. The voice outside chuckles, low and cold, like the rattle of dry bones. "Just a traveler, boy, looking for a place to rest my horse. You gonna open this door, or do I gotta invite myself in?" The words are polite, but the tone is a threat wrapped in velvet. Caleb hesitates, weighing his options. The cabin's walls are thin, its lock flimsy. There's no running from whoever's out there, not with the prairie stretching endless and merciless in every direction. He cracks the door open just enough to see the man. Gideon Voss stands tall, his face half hidden under the brim of a battered hat, his eyes glinting like a wolf's in the moonlight. His coat is dusted with trail dirt, and a Colt revolver hangs low on his hip, its handle worn smooth by use. "Evening," Gideon says, his smile sharp enough to cut. "Heard there's folks living out here, all alone. Thought I'd pay a visit." His gaze sweeps the cabin, lingering on the open tin by the hearth, the loose floorboards still askew. Caleb's stomach twists. He steps forward, blocking the view. "Ain't much here," he says. "Just me and my sister. We don't got room for guests." Gideon's smile doesn't falter, but his eyes narrow, reading Caleb like a poker hand. "That so?" he says, stepping closer, his spurs clinking with every move. "Funny thing, boy, I heard tell of a claim round these parts. A gold vein, rich as sin, lost when some fool prospector went and got himself killed. You wouldn't know nothing about that, would you?" Caleb's face stays stone, but his grip on the knife tightens. "Don't know what you're talking about," he says, his voice flat. Gideon chuckles again, but there's no warmth in it. "We'll see," he says, tipping his hat. "I'll be around." He turns and strides back into the night, his silhouette swallowed by the prairie's darkness. Caleb slams the door shut, his hands shaking as he slides the bolt. Ellie creeps down from the loft, her face pale. "Who was that?" she whispers. Caleb doesn't answer right away. He crosses to the window, peering out into the black. The prairie is silent now, but it feels alive, watching, waiting. "Trouble," he says finally. "We gotta move fast, Ellie. Tomorrow, we head for that canyon." The next morning, dawn breaks cold and gray, the Teton Range looming like a jury passing judgment. Caleb and Ellie pack what little they have: a worn saddlebag, a canteen, their father's old rifle with 3 bullets left. The deed is tucked, safe against Caleb's heart, but its weight feels heavier now, like a curse, as much as a blessing. They step outside, the cabin creaking behind them as if reluctant to let them go. The prairie stretches before them, vast and unforgiving, its grasses whispering secrets in the wind. Somewhere out there, the gold waits, and so does Gideon Voss. The Wyoming dawn is a fleeting thing, a thin veil of light that barely warms the frost-kissed prairie. The Teton Range looms in the distance, its peaks sharp and unyielding, like the edge of a blade held against the sky. Caleb and Ellie move quickly, their boots crunching on the frozen ground as they lead their sole horse, a gaunt mare named Juniper, toward the promise of the Wind River Hills. The saddlebag slung over Juniper's back holds their meager supplies. A canteen half full of water, a sack of dried beans, and their father's rifle. Its 3 bullets, a grim reminder of how little stands between them and the wilderness. The claim deed, tucked inside Caleb's jacket, feels heavier with every step, its inked lines a map to salvation, or a noose tightening around their necks. The prairie stretches endless around them, its grasses swaying like a sea that could swallow them whole. It's a land that doesn't care for dreams or despair, a character as alive as the siblings themselves, whispering danger in every gust of wind. Caleb walks ahead, his eyes scanning the horizon, the rifle slung across his shoulder. Ellie follows, her braid bouncing with each determined step, but her gaze darts nervously to the shadows of distant ridges. "You think he's following us?" she asks, her voice low, as if the prairie itself might betray them. Caleb doesn't turn, but his jaw tightens. "Gideon Voss don't strike me as the quittin' kind," he says, "but we got ahead. Start. That's something." The trail to the Wind River Hills is no trail at all, just a faint path worn by deer and desperation. The siblings climb a low rise, the ground turning rocky as the prairie gives way to scrub and stone. Caleb pauses, pulling the deed from his jacket to check the map. Its crude lines point to a narrow canyon marked by a twisted pine that clings to a cliff like a sentinel. "Should be a day's walk," he says, squinting at the hills ahead. Ellie nods, but her eyes catch something, a flash of movement far. Behind them, a speck against the vastness. "Caleb," she whispers, pointing. He follows her gaze, his hand tightening on the rifle. It's too far to be sure, but the prairie doesn't lie. Someone's on their trail. They push on, the air growing sharper as they ascend into the hills. The landscape shifts, the grass giving way to jagged outcrops and stunted pines that twist in the wind. The silence is oppressive, broken only by Juniper's labored breaths and the occasional cry of a hawk circling above. Ellie's steps slow, her face flushed from the climb. "Tell me about Ma and Pa," she says suddenly, her voice soft but insistent. Before they left us. What were they like when they found that claim?" Caleb hesitates, his mind pulling him back to memories he's tried to bury. "They were happy," he says finally. "Pa used to say the gold wasn't just money. It was a future. Ma'd laugh and say it was fool's talk, but she believed him anyway." Ellie smiles, but it's a fragile thing, like glass about to crack. "I want to believe him too," she says. The moment is cut short by a low rumble, a rock tumbling down a nearby slope, unnatural in its timing. Caleb spins, raising the rifle, his eyes scanning the ridges. The prairie is quiet again, but it's the kind of quiet that hides a predator. "Stay close," he tells Ellie, his voice barely above a whisper. They move faster now, the canyon drawing nearer, its mouth a dark slash in the earth. The twisted pine from the map stands alone, its branches gnarled like an old man's hands. Caleb's heart lifts. They're close. But as they approach, a figure steps from the shadows of the canyon's edge, his coat flapping in the wind. Gideon Voss, his colt glinting in the pale light, blocks their path. "Well, well," Gideon says, his voice smooth as snake oil but sharp as a razor. "Fancy meeting you two out here." His eyes lock on Caleb, then flick to Ellie, who stands, frozen, her hand on Juniper's reins. "That claim you don't know nothing about. It's in that canyon, ain't it?" Caleb steps forward, the rifle steady in his hands, though his pulse races. "This ain't your business," he says, his voice hard. Gideon laughs, a sound that chills the air. "Boy, everything in these hills is my business." He takes a step closer, his hand resting on his revolver. "Hand over that deed, and maybe you and your sister walk away." Ellie's breath hitches, but she steps beside Caleb, her chin high. "We ain't giving you nothing," she says, her voice trembling but defiant. Gideon's smile fades, his eyes cold as the Wyoming winter. The prairie watches, its silence heavier than ever. Caleb's finger tightens on the trigger. The canyon looms behind them, promising gold and danger in equal measure. The canyon's mouth gapes like a wound in the earth, its walls of red rock rising steep and silent under the Wyoming sky. The twisted pine clings to the cliff above, its roots clawing into stone as if defying the wind that howls through the Wind River Hills. Caleb stands firm, his father's rifle steady in his hands, its barrel aimed at Gideon Voss. Ellie grips Juniper's reins, her small frame taut with defiance, though fear flickers in her eyes. The mare snorts, sensing the tension, her hooves shifting on the rocky ground. Gideon's boots crunch as he takes another step, his colt still holstered but his hand itching for it. The prairie stretches behind him, vast and indifferent, its grasses whispering secrets of blood and betrayal. The air is thick with the promise of violence, and the canyon watches, as ancient and unyielding as the land itself. "You got one chance, boy," Gideon says, his voice low and cold, like the first frost of winter. "Hand over that deed and I'll let you and the girl walk. Ain't no need for this to get ugly." His eyes glint, sharp as the edge of a skinning knife, reading Caleb's every move. Caleb's heart thunders, but his grip on the rifle doesn't waver. "We ain't giving you our future," he says, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. "This claim's ours. You got no right." Gideon's lips curl into a sneer, his hand hovering closer to his revolver. "Rights don't I mean much out here," he says. "The West belongs to them that take it." Ellie steps forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a spark in dry grass. "You're a coward," she says, her words sharp enough to draw blood. "Stealing from kids 'cause you ain't got the guts to find your own gold." Gideon's eyes snap to her, and for a moment, something dangerous flashes in them. Anger, maybe, or a twisted kind of respect. "Brave little thing, ain't you?" he says, his tone mocking but his gaze hard. "Brave don't keep you alive, girl." He shifts his weight, his hand brushing the colt's grip, and Caleb's finger tightens on the trigger. The canyon holds its breath. Before anyone can move, a sharp crack echoes, a rock tumbling down the canyon wall, kicked loose by some unseen force. Gideon's head snaps toward the sound, his hand drawing the colt in a blur. Caleb seizes the moment, shoving Ellie behind him and swinging the rifle's barrel to follow Gideon's gaze. "Run!" he hisses to Ellie, but she grabs his arm, refusing to budge. "I ain't leaving you!" she whispers fiercely. The distraction buys them a heartbeat, and Caleb spots a narrow path snaking along the canyon's edge, barely wide enough for Juniper. "Move!" he says, pushing Ellie toward it. They scramble, the mare's hooves clattering on loose stone, as Gideon turns back, his colt now drawn and gleaming in the pale light. Stop right there! Gideon barks, his voice echoing off the canyon walls. He fires a shot, the bullet kicking, up dirt at Caleb's feet. The siblings duck behind a boulder, their breaths ragged, the rifle still clutched in Caleb's hands. Ellie's eyes are wide, but focused. "What now?" she whispers. Caleb peers around the rock, his mind racing. The path leads deeper into the canyon, toward the spot marked on the deed, but it's narrow, exposed, and treacherous. Gideon's boots crunch closer, his shadow long and menacing against the red rock. "You can't hide forever," he calls, his voice taunting. "That gold's mine, and I'll dig it out of your graves if I gotta." Caleb's eyes dart to the rifle. 3 bullets, 1 man. He knows he's no match for Gideon's quick draw, but he's got something the outlaw doesn't. Ellie, and the promise he made to their parents' ghosts. He turns to her, his voice low and urgent. "We get to that vein, we stake it proper. No one can take it then." Ellie nods, her jaw set, and points to a crevice in the canyon wall, just wide enough for them to slip through with juniper. "There," she says, "it'll hide us." Caleb hesitates, then nods. They move, silent and swift, the mare's sides, heaving as they squeeze into the crevice, the canyon's shadows swallowing them. Behind them, Gideon's footsteps slow, his spurs jingling like a death knell. The prairie beyond the canyon watches, its silence heavy with secrets. The siblings press deeper, the crevice narrowing, the walls closing in like a trap. The deed burns against Caleb's chest, a fragile hope in a land that offers none. Somewhere ahead, the gold waits. So does their fate. The canyon's walls press close, their red stone cold and unyielding, trapping the chill of the Wyoming morning. Jagged shadows slice across the narrow crevice where Caleb and Ellie crouch, their breaths clouding in the still air. Juniper, their mare, stands trembling, her flanks scraping against the rough rock as she squeezes through the tight passage. The claim deed, tucked inside Caleb's jacket, feels like a heartbeat against his chest, urging them deeper into the canyon's heart. Above, the twisted pine from their father's map looms somewhere out of sight, a silent guide to the gold that could save them, or doom them. The prairie beyond the canyon's mouth is a distant memory now, but its vastness lingers in their minds, a reminder of how small they are against its unforgiving sprawl. Every sound, the skitter of loose pebbles, the faint moan of wind, carries the threat of Gideon Voss, whose spurs still haunt the silence. Caleb leads the way, his father's rifle slung across his back, its 3 bullets a meager shield against the danger trailing them. Ellie follows close, her small hands gripping Juniper's reins, her eyes darting to every shadow. The crevice widens slightly, opening into a hidden alcove where the canyon floor dips into a shallow basin. A trickle of water runs through it, glinting like liquid silver in the dim light. Caleb kneels, studying the ground, his fingers brushing over faint scratches in the rock, marks left by a pickaxe, maybe their father's. "This is it," he whispers, pulling the deed from his jacket. The map's lines match the alcove's shape, the stream a marker for the vein. Paws strike. "It's gotta be here." Ellie's face lights up, but fear tempers her hope. "Then we stake it now," she says, her voice fierce despite the tremble in it. "Make it ours, legal-like." Caleb nods, but his eyes scan the alcove's edges, where the canyon walls rise like sentinels. The air feels heavy, as if the rock itself is watching, waiting. He pulls a small stake from the saddlebag, a piece of wood carved with their father's initials, and drives it into the soft earth near the stream. The act feels final, a claim not just to gold, but to their parents' dream. Ellie kneels beside him, her hands digging into the dirt, searching for any sign of the vein. Her fingers uncover a glint of yellow, a fleck of gold dust sparkling in the mud. "Caleb, look!" she gasps, her voice a mix of awe and urgency. But before they can celebrate, a low chuckle echoes through the alcove, cold and sharp as a winter. Blade. Gideon Voss steps from the crevice's mouth, his Colt drawn, its barrel catching the faint light. "Knew you'd lead me right to it," he says, his voice smooth but laced with venom. His hat casts a shadow across his face, but his eyes burn with greed. "You kids got heart, I'll give you that. But heart don't pay in these hills." Caleb scrambles to his feet, swinging the rifle up, but Gideon's quicker, his revolver steady. "Drop it, boy," he says, "or I put a bullet through the girl first." Ellie freezes, her hand still in the dirt, gold dust clinging to her fingers. Caleb's jaw clenches, his mind racing. 3 bullets, 1 shot, no room for error. He lowers the rifle, letting it rest against the rock, but his eyes never leave Gideon's. "You don't gotta do this," Caleb says, his voice low, pleading not for mercy but for time. "There's enough out here for all of us." Gideon laughs, a sound that grates against the canyon's stillness. "Enough?" he says. "Ain't never enough. Not for me." He steps closer, his boots crunching on the rocky floor, his gaze flicking to the stake in the ground. "That your claim? Cute. Won't mean nothing when you're dead." Ellie's breath hitches, but she stands, her small frame trembling with defiance. "You're nothing but a thief," she spits, her voice cutting through the tension. "Pa's gold ain't yours. Never will be." Gideon's smile fades, his grip on the Colt tightening. "Keep talking, girl," he says. "See where it gets you." The canyon seems to tighten around them, its walls amplifying every word, every heartbeat. Caleb's mind churns, searching for a way out. The rifle's too far, Gideon's too fast. But the alcove's shadows offer something else, a loose slab of rock above Gideon's head, perched precariously on the canyon wall. Caleb catches Ellie's eye, nodding slightly toward it. She understands, her hand inching toward a stone at her feet. "We ain't alone out here," Caleb says, stalling, his voice steady. "The law'll come for that claim, legal or not." Gideon scoffs, but his eyes flicker, just for a moment. It's enough. Ellie hurls the stone, not at Gideon, but at the slab above him. It shifts, tumbling with a roar, and Gideon dives aside. As dust and rock explode around him, Caleb grabs Ellie, pulling her toward the stream, the rifle forgotten in the chaos. They scramble deeper into the alcove, the canyon swallowing them once more. Behind them, Gideon's curses echo, drowned by the rumble of settling stone. The gold glints faintly in the dirt, a promise left behind, for now. The canyon's heart beats on, pulse of danger and hope intertwined. The canyon's depths are a labyrinth of shadow and stone, its walls closing in like the jaws of some ancient beast. The air is thick with dust, stirred by the collapse of the rock slab, and the faint trickle of the stream is the only sound breaking. The silence. Caleb and Ellie crouch behind a jagged outcrop, their breaths shallow, their eyes scanning the haze for Gideon Voss. Juniper, their mare, stands tethered in a narrow alcove, her ears twitching at every echo. The claim deed, still tucked against Caleb's chest, feels like a burning coal, its promise of gold now a fragile thread holding their future together. The Wyoming prairie beyond the canyon waits, its vastness a silent witness to their struggle, its winds carrying the weight of dreams and desperation. This is their last stand, and the canyon knows it. Caleb's hands tremble as he checks the rifle, its 3 bullets now down to 2 after the chaos of their escape. Ellie clutches a sharp stone, her face smudged with dirt, but her eyes blazing, with the same stubborn fire that's carried her this far. "He's still out there," she whispers, her voice steady despite the fear creeping into her bones. Caleb nods, peering through the dust. The alcove where they staked their claim lies just beyond their hiding spot, the glint of gold dust still scattered in the stream's mud. "We protect that stake," he says, his voice low but fierce. "It's all we got left of 'em, Ma. Pa, their dream." Ellie's hand tightens on the stone and she nods, a silent vow. A shadow moves in the haze, deliberate and unhurried. Gideon Voss emerges, his coat torn from the falling rock, his face streaked with blood, but his Colt still steady in his hand. His eyes burn with a hunger that no gold could sate, a man hollowed out by greed. "You kids are starting to wear on my patience," he calls, his voice echoing off the canyon walls like a predator's growl. "That claim's mine, and I ain't leaving without it." He steps closer, his spurs clinking, each sound a countdown to violence. Caleb raises, the rifle, his heart pounding but his aim true. "You'll leave empty-handed or not at all," he says, his voice carrying the weight of a boy forced to become a man. Gideon laughs, a harsh, grating sound that cuts through the canyon's stillness. "Big talk for a kid with a half-empty?" "Gun!" he says, raising his Colt. But before he can fire, Ellie hurls her stone, striking his wrist. The revolver clatters to the ground, and Caleb seizes the moment, lunging forward with a shout. He tackles Gideon, the two tumbling into the stream, water splashing like liquid fire in the dim light. Ellie scrambles for the Colt, her small hands shaking as she grabs it, but she doesn't shoot. She can't. Not yet. "Caleb!" she cries, her voice raw with panic. The fight is brutal, primal, the canyon amplifying every grunt and blow. Gideon's eye, stronger, his fists hardened by years of cruelty. But Caleb's driven by something fiercer, a promise to protect Ellie, to honor their parents' graves. He lands a desperate blow to Gideon's jaw, staggering him, and rolls free, gasping for air. Ellie tosses him the rifle, and he catches it, swinging it up as Gideon lurches to his feet, blood dripping into the stream. "Last chance," Caleb says, his voice hoarse but unyielding. "Walk away." Gideon's eyes narrow, but something shifts in them. Maybe the realization that these kids, battered and outnumbered, won't break. He spits into the dirt, his hands raised. "This ain't over," he growls, backing away, his silhouette swallowed by the canyon's shadows. The siblings stand frozen, the rifle still raised until the jingle of Gideon's spurs fades into the wind. The canyon exhales, its walls seeming to loosen their grip. Caleb lowers the rifle, his body trembling with exhaustion. Ellie runs to him, throwing her arms around him, her face buried in his chest. "We did it," she whispers, tears mixing with the dirt on her cheeks. Caleb nods, his eyes on the stake still standing proud in the stream's bank, the gold dust glinting like a promise kept. "For Ma and Pa," he says, his voice breaking. They kneel together, their hands touching the earth where their parents' dream took root, the prairie beyond the canyon whispering of hope reborn. As the sun climbs higher, painting the Teton, range in gold, Caleb and Ellie gather their things, Juniper's reins in hand. The claim is theirs, staked and defended, a legacy forged in courage and loss. The prairie stretches before them, vast and untamed, but it feels different now. Not a threat, but a home. They walk toward the horizon, their shadows long and unbroken, carrying the weight of their past and the light of their future. And to you, watching this tale unfold, thank you for riding with Caleb and Ellie through this wild land. If their story stirred your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to join us for more journeys through the West. Drop a comment below. Tell us what you'd fight for, what legacy you'd stake in the face of impossible odds. Until next time, keep the prairie's spirit alive.